The action group reflections talk about trying to break down silos. How do you do that when you've set up a ministerial system with different departments?
Well, I think you do, as the Council of Parties has demonstrated, you pull all of your partners together. We've used that on some of our legislation already. It was through the work that when we did the Children in Cares Act and we reviewed it, we made a number of recommendations really based on the recommendations and the strategies that this inquiry was using when it came to the Big Mud children to ensure that we used the cultural component, the fact that it was important that we remain in the communities. It's very clear out of this group from the council that we had to make sure that we kept children who were in care in their cultural environment.
How confident are you that, let's change that real change can come from this particular report?
I'm very confident. There's a willingness inside of the public service. The social deputies now meet on a regular basis. We have obviously the deputies as a whole meet, but many of them, depending on where their departments overlap, they meet regularly to ensure that policies and systems reflect their shared responsibilities of delivering services to children and families.
And can you reassure Nova Scotians that something like this will not happen again? Is there any way to do that?
I believe there is, if people come into it with the right spirit. I believe the council, I'm really proud of the work that Jerry and Tony and their members did. Many of you remember when I came into government, we acknowledged the role and the responsibility of the government in that home. And then they wanted to actually not continue to lay blame. They wanted to figure out how can we put in place a system that ensures this doesn't happen. And while you can never be 100% sure, I believe that the path we're on is one that will make it very difficult.
And how much longer will you continue to fund this group?
Well, their work is finished. They're in the final report. The final report will be out in the end of June, I believe it is, and then we'll work on that.
Premier, this report is from the council. Can you explain its importance, how it differs from the inquiry, in that my understanding is this body is there to make sure that things get done, and that if there's important information that comes forward, that changes are made. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, they're one and the same. They're one and the same, really. The council has been with the inquiry, but it's been voices who've been leading the way. Tony and Jerry are chairing that. But we brought in all of our partners. The police were part of this. Deputy ministers were part of this. The judiciary were part of it. I and the executive team met with this group twice. I hope to meet them again before the final report is out to be part of it in the model of how they continue to share their own experiences and quite frankly how we can improve the system.
And is this the final report for the council?
No, there will be one more which will come in June. So this is the final, this is the second anniversary, but the recommendations will come out in June.
And when you say the recommendations, that's for the overall inquiry, correct?
It will be about steps forward. It will also be about not necessarily, do A, B, and C. It may have A, B, and C in it, but it will also really talk about, as my remarks refer to today, a cultural shift, which means that it'll be continuing to have the conversation inside of all of our systems, so that minorities in this province feel a part of it. I've said all along, in 2013, my goal was to ensure that more Nova Scotians saw themselves reflected in our institutions. That's why the judiciary looks very different today. African Nova Scotians are sitting on the bench. Mi'kmaq woman is sitting on the bench. Gender parity. It was because that all-important institution of the judiciary needs to reflect all of us. For far too long, too many in the minority communities saw the judiciary as an adversarial place, and it needs to be reflected that it can and it is a system that can provide support for good.
What has this report outlined that can be implemented immediately in the immediate future?
Pardon?
What has this report outlined that can be implemented by your government in the immediate future?
Well, a number of them that came out. One of them was this report recommended that the council talked about the judiciary and the fact that for too long minorities did not see themselves reflected in that. I believe they do today. I talked about the Children in Care Act. That was work that came out of that in talking about cultural importance for minority communities. the African Nova Scotia community. When we were taking children into care, oftentimes we would take them right out of the community, as opposed to attach them to another family member or grandparents. It was simply not working for those children, and the changes that we're making will reflect the things that we've heard, and some of those have already happened.
You mentioned street checks in the legislature. Why doesn't your government take the acts that do with the communities and finally ban them outright?
Well, because the opposition mentioned those, I didn't mention in my remarks, but what the minister has said, he's taken a number of steps regarding the street checks, and he will continue to take the report, and he will make a full recommendation.
Premier, on the organ donation bill, there's some concern within the LGBTQ community that men who have sex with men, as with blood donation, will be restricted for organ and tissue donation. What can you tell people who have that concern?
That is not that's not my intent. That'll be part, though, as we roll that out. I don't believe that they will be restricted.
So are they currently restricted from donating?
I'm not 100% sure that, but I can get to the information. I can check that out, but I don't believe so. It was not. It's certainly not my intent in any way that someone would be restricted. If someone was being, I know, for example, today, oftentimes if you're diagnosed with cancer and you end up going through cancer treatment, that restricts your ability to donate certain organs. I don't know related to that, but that would be something that wouldn't be set by government. It would be sitting around the healthcare teams.
And it's within your power to do that. It's not federal.
No, I don't believe. I think it would be part of this as we roll out the parameters around the donations.
Premier, how long do you think it will take, and how much will it cost to implement all the recommendations that are coming? Because they're talking about systemic change. That doesn't happen quickly.
I think part of it was a lot of what they're talking about isn't financial. It's cultural. It's an attitude change. It is making sure that people see themselves reflected in it. It was no cost, or no more cost, I should say. It was no more expensive to appoint minorities to the bench than it was to appoint other judges. But I believe it's had a huge impact. I believe the issues in and around taking children into care was a system that didn't understand the experiences of minorities and the importance of the broader family. Grandparents' role in the lives of African Nova Scotia children, the community's role and a system who, when we took those children into care, we often took them out of that community. That doesn't cost us money. That takes compassion and listening and understanding.
But is there money attached to it?
Well, depending on what the recommendations they bring forward, we'll determine that. But we're committed, and I'm committed to this work. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.